everyone. This is Kristen Eulenbrock, the host of Laws of Notion. It's been almost 5 years since we brought you our very first season, Coal at Sunset, a Colorado town in transition. In 2021, we went to Craig, Colorado, as it grappled with the forthcoming closure of the coal plant and mine that economically anchored the town. But now, a new federal intervention requires the plant to remain open for the time being. So we decided to re-release our original story about a town on the front lines of the energy transition. Over the next 3 remix episodes from our archive, you'll meet the people on the ground grappling with the move away from coal. Then be sure to stay tuned for our new mini-series, Coal at Sunset, Still Burning, to learn where Craig stands now in 2026 as economics, politics, and science continue to collide. I hope you enjoy. In the town of Craig, Colorado, coal is a lot of things. A job, a duty, an identity, a way of life. For decades, the nearby mines and coal-fired power plant have been a bedrock in this tight-knit community. They've provided well-paying jobs. They've supplied dependable energy for homes and businesses. There's a popular saying in Craig, coal keeps the lights on. But something is about to change. At the Trapper Coal Mine, 7 miles south of town, Graham Roberts expertly guides his pickup truck down a rocky track.
Yeah, the road's just rough enough.
He's been the environmental supervisor here for 16 years.
Hey, Graham, we've got a coal haul out of Ed Pit right now, but we'll probably be switching over to L Pit.
Oh, that'll work. I think we'll just go up there on the high wall and look at that.
Tall and slim, with round glasses that make him look more like a scholar than a coal miner, he points to a pit that drops 150 feet into the earth.
Trapper Mine is a surface mine, which means we go to retrieve the coal from the top down. So we do open a large hole, a pit, to access that coal. We call that material that we move overburden. The coal lays in seams, and there can be multiple seams of coal as you go down.
He stops the truck on a high overlook and puts on a hard hat.
Well, yeah, we'll get out here. We should have an active coal haul here to see. I think they're hauling overburden down the pit, so please watch your step. Don't get too far over this berm. It's a long ways off.
We are looking down at massive yellow Tonka trucks. They've got 11-foot high tires. Eventually, these trucks will return with their flatbeds filled to the brim with coal. That coal is destined for the Craig Power Station, where it will be burned to create electricity.
Trapper, again, is a bit of a unique site throughout the world, really, because our operation is on the side of a small mountain range, so you have a pretty good slope to the topography we're working on. Trapper being on a slope averaging about 14%, which is pretty steep in spots. That's far steeper than even your average mountain pass in the mountains, Colorado, when you're going up the highway.
Soft-spoken with a wry sense of humor, it's clear Graham takes pride in his work. He comes alive when he talks about coal's legacy in Craig. Because he's not just describing his job, he's talking about his family.
I'm actually a third-generation employee here at Trapper. My grandfather worked here about 6 months before he retired. Cecil Roberts was his name. He was actually a crane operator and was here building the shop and putting the drag lines together. But my dad started here in February of 1977. He was a serviceman, an equipment operator, and eventually dragline operator here at Trapper for 30-some years, and he retired in 2011. So I've been around Trapper my entire life.
But now, the future, as he once imagined it, is uncertain. In January 2020, Graham learned from his employer that the plant and mines would officially sunset by the end of the decade. That's just a fancy way of saying that they'll close for good. The same goes for most of the other coal resources around the state. Cole's time in Colorado is coming to an end.
We'll stop here at Trapper in 2028. There's probably about 2, maybe 3 years at the most where you'll have a small workforce still working on the reclamation and cleanup of the site to make it basically permanently go away.
Knowing the end was in sight was hard for Graham, as it was for many in Craig. It felt like they were being set adrift. Graham struggled to explain the news to his family.
I have 2 children, a boy and a girl. They are 11 and 13 right now. And they often ask, "Well, geez, Dad, you're not going to have a job in a few years?" And I said, "Well, it's very much possible, kids." And that can be scary for children. Because as a child, you don't think about where Mom and Dad are getting the money or how long their job is going to last. They just know they're in their home and they have the things they have. And so it can be scary for children to come to that realization that, geez, Dad's job could be finite, you know? What we have could be finite. What are we going to do?
Graham didn't agree with the decision to close the mine, mostly because there's still lots more coal in the ground.
It seems a bit forced. I think we could do more here, and we're doing it. We do it in such a way that our impacts are minimal, and we do a good job here. And it'd be nice to see this operation continue on.
How would you feel if part of your identity was taken away?
Yeah, to see this all go away and the circumstances of it, it does sadden me a little bit because it's been a great operation. This is one of the best examples of a coal mine in the state and the country, both from a production standpoint, a safety standpoint, our reclamation, and our community involvement. You know, we've just been a really great employer here in the Valley. Good operation, and yeah, to see it go away, it's going to be a real hole in this community and with these guys that have worked out here. And I think you'd be hard-pressed to find a lot of employers who can show you how many guys spent 25, 30 years at a place and retired continuously because it was a good place to work. It really was.
This is Coal at Sunset, a Colorado town in transition. I'm your host, Kristen Eulenbrock. I'm the director of the Institute for Science and Policy at the Denver Museum of Nature and Science. This is a story about energy. You know, the energy that we use every day. The electricity that powers our refrigerators, our air conditioners, our smartphones. We use a lot of it, and it all has to come from somewhere. For a long time, that somewhere was likely a coal plant fed by coal mines. Today, it's more complicated. I'm a scientist by training. I've worked at the intersection of science and policy for over a decade, first in Washington, D.C., and now here in Colorado. I like tackling big challenges and wicked problems with costs and trade-offs. And I can say without hesitation, energy is one of the most complex issues facing our society today. That's because coal is very reliable. Historically, it was cheap, but it's also very dirty. Burning coal emits huge amounts of carbon dioxide, methane, and other greenhouse gases into the air. These emissions are driving global warming at rates unseen in human history. The best available science indicates that we have to reduce greenhouse gases drastically to avoid the worst consequences of climate change, and we have to do it fast. We also have more choices today about where we get our energy from. Wind, solar, natural gas, hydropower, nuclear, they're all cleaner than coal. And most of those are getting more affordable. Nationwide, the energy transition is already underway. Coal production is currently at its lowest level since the 1960s. But what will the end of coal mean for people like Graham Roberts? Thousands of livelihoods around Colorado are dependent on coal. Towns like Craig rely on those jobs too. They don't want coal to go away. It's part of their cultural identity, and we still need that reliable energy from somewhere. When a mine or a plant shuts down, the consequences are very real. The Institute for Science and Policy was created to have these kinds of conversations. We want science to have a respected place at the policy table. But science is only part of the equation. Human nature plays a role too. We're emotional, irrational beings. And sometimes we see the world in fundamentally different ways. But progress comes when we can bring people together to build both trust and empathy. There's one more thing you should know about me. I grew up in rural Indiana. I know what it's like to live in a small community, which is why I needed to find out what this transition would mean for a town of 9,000 people. I wanted to understand more about coal and its important legacy in this region. And I wanted to listen to people from Craig and beyond to hear their stories. I said earlier that this is a story about energy, but it's also a story about change. Change is hard. It's uncomfortable. Our energy transition won't have easy solutions. We need a way forward that protects people as well as the planet. And maybe Craig will have some answers. So let's start there. In Colorado's Wild West days, coal was king. Coal equated to prosperity. The state's vast reserves fueled rapid industrialization from the late 1800s through the 1920s. It powered the Great Railroad expansion, including a planned Denver to Salt Lake City line. The project was never completed, and the tracks stopped in the town of Craig. Fast forward a century, and things have changed dramatically. Colorado has moved towards cleaner forms of energy. That's partly because we have copious amounts of wind and sun, but also because in 2004, Colorado became the first state in the nation to pass a renewable energy standard. That meant that utilities had to generate at least some of their electricity from non-fossil fuel sources. In the ensuing years, renewable development increased and coal fell out of favor.
To the best of my ability.
To the best of my ability.
In November 2018, Colorado voters elected Governor Jared Polis. He'd campaigned on strong climate change mitigation. That following spring, lawmakers took up multiple bills designed to rein in fossil fuels and reduce greenhouse gas emissions.
Colorado has a new plan to limit its contributions to climate change. Lawmakers drafted ambitious rules to cut back on pollutants that cause warming. They also passed new regulations for oil and gas drilling in the state.
The first big bill makes health and safety a priority for oil and gas regulation. The second big bill writes in law greenhouse gas reduction goals. The ultimate goal is to reduce greenhouse gas emissions 90% by 2050.
That second bill, known as House Bill 1261, or the Colorado Climate Action Plan, was ultimately signed into law. And those new emission targets meant big changes. Electrical utilities needed to take a hard look at where they could cut the most carbon dioxide the fastest. There was one obvious answer: coal, which emits about twice as much CO2 as natural gas. Suddenly, a coal hub like Craig had very real reasons to worry. Four hours northwest of Denver and 40 minutes west of Steamboat Springs, the town is nestled in the wide, sloping Yampa River Valley. Arriving from the east, you'll pass motels welcoming hunters to the elk hunting capital of the world. Continuing on, you pass a historic main street dotted with vintage storefronts. You'll see century-old houses surrounded by old-growth trees, ranch supply stores, Western apparel shops, a liquor store with a marquee that reads, "We support coal." And then, high on the ridge to the south, you can't miss the coal-fired power station. Its three massive stacks loom on the horizon. The Craig Station is operated by Tri-State Generation and Transmission Association. Tri-State is a not-for-profit, member-owned electric co-op that serves 45 local power districts across Colorado, New Mexico, Wyoming, and Nebraska, which, yes, is 4 states, not 3. Tri-State also owns the nearby Kalawao mine and partially owns the Trapper mine. After the Climate Action Bill passed, Tri-State had a choice to make. Hundreds of jobs and livelihoods were at stake if they closed the plant and the mines. That difficult decision fell squarely on one man.
I'm Dwayne Hiley. I serve as the CEO for Tri-State Generation and Transmission Association. I came to Tri-State on April Fool's Day of 2019, which I think is the perfect day to start a new job.
Dwayne is definitely not what you'd expect from a powerful utility leader. He's way too laid back, way too funny, and way too self-deprecating. He cares a lot about people, and his humility reflects his upbringing.
I grew up all over the place, Indiana, Illinois, Missouri, Oklahoma. My dad was a retail store opening manager at the time when people were opening lots of stores, and so we moved a lot. I went to a different school every year and had been to 10 different schools by the time I got to the 10th grade. So I learned to move and adapt. I think my grandfather was a great inspiration for electrical engineering because he was a self-taught electrical engineering geek. He built the first television in his neighborhood, and all the neighbors would come watch the boxing matches and all that business. So he was well inspiring to me.
Another thing that's immediately clear about Dwayne, he loves electricity, even if he was skeptical at first.
As I was getting through with my electrical engineering degree and starting to think about where I would work, I took an internship with an electric co-op, but thinking that it was just a boring job. Really, I mean, electricity, come on, it was invented in the 1880s or something. How could there be anything new happening in that space? So it was literally just a summer job with the thought being this was a way to get some money, but surely I was going to go to work in microprocessors or, radar systems or something much more interesting when I graduated. And at the time I came out of school, my wife and I actually had a conversation about this. And if it turns out to be boring, we'll bail within a year and then we'll get into something more exciting.
But the industry won him over. He was drawn to the mission of electrical co-ops, which are member-owned and deliver power primarily to rural areas.
I did go to work for the electric cooperatives and was never bored a day. Had lots of great challenges, learned that there's a lot of innovation going on in cooperatives and a lot of flexibility because the members own the system. And that direct feedback from the people who own the co-op gives you license to do things that help people immediately. I just found that to be really motivating, that we had a purpose. And the purpose was, I remember my boss sitting me down the first day on the job and said, if you can figure out a way to save $1, you just saved some poor person at the end of the line $1 on their electric bill. And that might make a difference for them if they're struggling to pay their rent or whatever. So I always took that as a real motivation that the difference we made wasn't so a shareholder could make more money. The difference we made was so that someone, usually poor people, because that's generally who co-ops serve. We serve 90-some% of the persistent poverty counties in the country. So it's an opportunity to make a difference for people in their lives, to help them have reliable power and to help them have a more affordable lifestyle.
By early 2019, Dwayne had built a successful career in the utility space, rising all the way to the executive level. And then a new opportunity presented itself.
So I had been serving as the CEO for the Arkansas Electric Cooperative Network for the previous 8 years. And maybe I shouldn't tell the story, but I'm going to tell it anyway. My wife and I were sitting on our patio in Arkansas talking one evening, having a glass of wine. And she looked at me and said, "Dwayne, you're bored." I argued with her. I said, "No, I'm not." And she said, "Yeah, I think you are." And I'm like, "No, I still love what I'm doing. And, it's interesting and entertaining. And for me, again, work is a fulfillment of purpose. So it's not really work. It's what you do to make life better for people." So anyway, she challenged me. And about that time, I heard that the CEO for Tri-State was considering retirement. So I made a call to the recruiter because I knew the recruiter from my former career and just said, "Do you think they're looking for somebody like me?" And that started the conversation. What I learned is what I already knew. There are profound challenges in the West, and that Tri-State sits what I've called the tip of the spear on the energy transition. So I came flying towards the challenge.
He moved to Colorado and began his new role that spring. At the same time, the Climate Action Bill was nearing passage.
within a couple weeks, we saw the Colorado General Assembly passed the Carbon Reduction Act. I hadn't even met with all the employees of Tri-State yet, and was scheduled to make my first visit to Craig, Colorado, where we have a very large coal facility and a mine. Over 400 employees that work in either mining or burning coal. And this was going to be my first introduction to them. And the night before I went there, this bill passed. And so it was clear that in order to get an 80% carbon reduction in Colorado relative to 2005 levels by the year 2030, that plant and mine were going to close. There was just no way around it. And I was going to meet with the employees for the very first time. And my first thing I was going to tell them was, guess what? Your jobs are going away.
The reality of the situation was gutting for Dwayne. He had to deliver the bad news to his employees.
And they're like, Dwayne, what's going to happen here? And I'm like, honestly, I just have to be honest. We will not be able to operate this plant after 2030.
Tri-State announced the decision publicly in January 2020.
Tonight, the city, which is around 4 hours from Denver, is bracing for change after Tri-State, which operates mines in the city, announced they are moving up the timeline to close them down.
At this point, what we've announced is the first of 3 units will close in 2025, followed by 2028 and 2029 for the other 2 units. So people have time to plan, and that's a good thing.
Dwayne vowed to do right by his workers.
I think the employees really appreciated an honest answer. And we were going to work together to try and figure out how we can make that transition one that was as good as possible for the employees and for the community. And the community is very dependent on those jobs. You think about 400 really high-paying jobs that are great benefits. Everybody would want to work for the mine or the plant. That's the place you want to aspire to be. And then to say it's closing, what's that mean for the community?
In the months that followed, Craig had to reckon with the idea of a post-coal future, and that path is unclear. Many spoke of fear and uncertainty. Others remained in denial. Coal can't go away, they said. They believed Tri-State would change its mind. They heard whispers that the plant would stay open. When it comes right down to it, they said Colorado needs coal, needs them. We wanted to hear from the community about Tri-State's decision. So we started listening.
Honestly, it's kind of terrifying that someone can just legislate so many people out of work.
Anger and disbelief.
I don't know that people fully understand the devastation that's going to come when the mines and the plant close.
But it's a scary thing from the beginning. I mean, every business in Craig will be affected in some way or another.
It was quite a shock to the community, although if you look at when they put the power plant in, it's already past its life that they told us. So we've been kind of living in this perpetual state of denial that it's just going to always still be there.
That last voice is Jennifer Holloway, Executive Director of the Craig Chamber of Commerce. Her goal is to help businesses and the community navigate this transition.
You go down into a coal mine every night because you're providing something for the rest of the country. You're giving the rest of the country electricity to build their businesses and their communities, and you're feeding your family well. And you have pride in that because your family lives in a community that respects that makes that something that you strive to do. We are raised to feel good about going to the coal and power plants to provide electricity for the rest of the country. And so that's so much part of our identity that how can we take those basic things like we're hardworking, we love our families, we'll do anything for our neighbors. How do we take that and transfer it to a different opportunity?
Coal jobs pay very well, usually close to $100,000 a year. But Craig lacks other major industries, and workers may not be able to find other high-paying jobs as easily.
We're in bad shape. When the coal mine and the power plant closes, we're going to be losing about 60% of our county tax base. How do we pay for our schools and our roads with 60% less money when we're already short? When we already need to infrastructure improvement, we need to pay our teachers more to keep them. You know, all of the same problems that school districts have, except for we're going to lose 60% of our tax base.
That could lead to devastating ripple effects for the local economy.
It's hard to feel like you have a voice in a small community anyways, because we're 10,000 people compared to several million in a big city. So even if all of us yell at the top of our lungs, are we heard?
And then there's Kirsty McPherson. She's a local entrepreneur and business owner who was born and raised in Craig, and she's not about to let the end of coal spell the end for her hometown.
Welcome to Craig, America. I am your host, Kirsty McPherson.
On a hot, hazy summer afternoon, we rode along with her as she headed to work in the town center. Like an expert tour guide, she points out highlights about Craig along the way.
I mean, we have a very defined, very pretty downtown. This was the original church that's now the center of Craig, so a lot of people get married there. But it's like, I mean, this big, beautiful white church that they recently redid. And then this is where all of the Victorian homes and like kind of the money street was, if you were back here in the day. Some of these big, beautiful homes, and it kind of goes through. I mean, you can see how old parts of town are based off of what the trees look like. I mean, the giant cottonwoods, and that's how you know you're in the old part of town.
At not even 30 years old, Kirsty is an entrepreneurial dynamo. She already owns multiple downtown businesses and is planning for more. We park outside of a renovated storefront on Yampa Avenue, the town's main drag.
This is 518 Wine Bar in the Find, and we've had this building since June of 2019, but we opened the wine bar September 27th of 2019, and then joke's on us, 2020 hit. But because we live in a town like Craig, it really, I mean, we were able to keep it through, but for our very first year in business, it was a pretty rough go. But it's a cute little building. We're still missing a sign, but we'll figure that out eventually.
She leads us through the Find, her mercantile shop. It's lined with cool vintage furniture and upscale home goods.
So you walk through a very cute and quaint boutique store that we've had for 5 years.
Way at the back, another doorway leads into the stylish 518 Wine Bar. It looks like a speakeasy from a different era.
And once you get back here, you see very dark walls, very plush seating. You have gold couches, a green bar. We have all of the wine racks up, and so it feels like a space right out of the 1920s. And everybody who walks in here, definitely they either show it on their face or flat out say, this is not like, are we even in Craig still? And we have a lot of people that come up from Steamboat that actually say that they wish that they had something this cool in Steamboat as well. So it's pretty cool to be able to create something that people are coming in and wishing that they had this in their own community.
Kirsty is part of Craig's up-and-coming generation, bringing new ideas and new creative energy to town. That wasn't originally part of her life plan.
So I was born and raised in Craig, and I left right after high school, as everybody does, and wasn't ever going to come back. And I was going to go and be an engineer and do all the various different things that I set out to do in the first place. And I was going to be a petroleum engineer. I made it a whole one year, I think. So I switched to business, and I got into the tech startup world, which was a wild ride. So when you're doing a startup, you also don't have any money. But I decided that the best move would be to come back home, which was pretty devastating for me in a lot of ways. And I made this pact with myself that I was only going to be home for 3 years. Well, it's been almost 5. I'm likely going to get buried here.
She knows how important coal has been to Craig. She also knew that one day it might come to an end.
My dad started working at Colorado pretty much when the mine started. And so that was always the topic of conversation around the dinner table every single night. My family has been talking about the potential of the mines closing since I was little. The very first conversations that I remember are some of those conversations. So it's never been one of those pieces where everybody thought that this was going to be what we were forever. And I remember being in high school and listening to conversations around like when Tri-State was originally talking about when they're going to begin the decommissioning process. And so we've had a gigantic amount of time to be able to prepare for all of this. And even after they officially made the announcement, we still have way more time than a lot of places were able, like, ever afforded to. Like, you look at Kentucky, they all went into work on a Wednesday and were sent home by 10 a.m. We at least have 9 years to really start thinking about how we're going to transition and move on. But would I say it was a shock? No.
Craig has the gift of time that many other coal towns didn't, but it'll still be painful.
What we do know from transitioning economies is people will do one of three things. They'll stay here and they'll take a smaller job because their family's here, or they have something, but it's not going to be the exact job that they've already had, and it's likely a pay cut. The second is that they're going to move to find another job that is exactly like what they've already had, or the third is that they're going to create businesses.
Kirsty can envision a new future for Craig, a hopeful future with a revitalized Main Street and a thriving post-coal economy, a brand new identity. She wants to be part of that transformation, but it's going to be hard work, and there's no guarantee of success.
We were very fortunate to have decades doing what we did, but nothing lasts forever.
Craig has less than 10 years until coal sunsets for good. There are no easy answers for what comes next, but change is coming no matter what. I'm standing on the roof of the coal-fired power station just south of Craig, Colorado. It's a clear day. I can see the rolling hills of the Yampa River Valley, running east towards Steamboat Springs and west towards Dinosaur National Monument. Down below, the town of Craig is sparkling in the morning sunlight. For Tim Osborne, the coal plant manager, the view from up here has special meaning.
Well, I've been here for 31 years. It's home. I was actually born in Craig. I was younger when the place was built. I graduated high school right about the time Unit 3 was coming online. So I got to experience a lot of boom in the town when there were lots of extra bodies around.
Standing well over 6 feet tall with a powerful build, Tim very much looks the part of a no-nonsense foreman. He works for Tri-State and supervises over 100 employees. He keeps everything operating smoothly. He also has a sense of humor about some other skills that come in handy.
I actually have a degree in sociology and a master's degree in family life and an MBA in engineering and technology management.
Cool.
So
Okay.
in general, I'll just say I do a lot of parenting.
We walk over to the edge of the roof. We're in the shadow of 3 towering stacks, each corresponding to one of the station's 3 operational units. Far below, we see heavy conveyor equipment and rail cars that bring in coal from the nearby mines, Trapper and Kalawao. Massive piles of coal have already been unloaded on the ground.
We have a coal train that comes in every day from Kalawao, about 30 miles south of us here. 100-car train, 11,500 tons. We unload one of those every day into that pile. All the coal from Trapper, somewhere in the neighborhood of 10,000 tons a day, is delivered over here onto this pile.
Tim has enough coal on hand to power thousands of homes and businesses for over a month. These reserves can be stored indefinitely and burned as needed to meet electricity demands in any weather, any time of day. Historically, that's been a selling point for coal compared to renewable energy sources like wind and solar. The sun doesn't always shine and the wind doesn't always blow, but coal has always been there. There are significant downsides, though. Burning coal emits significant amounts of greenhouse gases into the atmosphere, which contribute to global warming. Even the cleanest burning coal plants still release harmful pollutants into the air. And that's partly why recent polling shows the public shying away from coal. People want greener energy. Colorado's 2019 Climate Action Bill was just the latest indication that the state is moving in a different direction. Tim's employer, Tri-State, is moving on too. In January 2020, the member-owned utility company made the decision to phase out its coal mines and the coal plant over the next decade in order to invest more in renewables. Tim sees what's coming. He knows that the end is in sight.
The plant is closing down. There will be effect on the community. The plant is closing. I don't see a pendulum swing in a different direction to allow this to continue. Just don't see it. I don't think that the will of the tri-state members wants that to happen either. And that's what we're here for, is to provide power for the tri-state members. The members want cleaner and greener energy on the grid. That's what Tri-State's going to try to do.
He turns back and looks down at the rail yard again, where coal is still being unloaded.
You can see this pile has gone down significantly if you'd been here a year ago, but it is energy storage. If you look at it in those terms, we have the ability to use that fuel to produce electricity. So we've got storage here on the ground. It's just coal, and that's unpopular for society.
This is Coal at Sunset, a Colorado town in transition. I'm your host, Kristen Uhlenbrock. I work at the Institute for Science and Policy at the Denver Museum of Nature and Science. In order to understand the ongoing energy transition, we needed to understand more about the science of coal and the changing economics of using it to generate energy. How exactly does a primordial rock mined out of the ground become the electricity we use every day? Coal is very, very, very old. It's found all over the world. Colorado's reserves likely date back to the Upper Cretaceous period, somewhere between 66 and 100 million years ago. Back then, much of what is now North America was covered in swampland. Dead plants fell into those swamps, creating thick layers of organic debris. Over millions of years, more and more layers got added. Eventually, the heat and the pressure of the Earth's changing surface compacted all that material so tightly that all the oxygen was forced out and only carbon was left behind. Those ancient deposits are the black coal seams we can find today. Once humans arrived, we discovered that coal burns really, really well. There's some evidence that early civilizations, including the Aztecs and the Romans, used coal as fuel in a limited capacity. It was particularly useful for cooking and metalworking. But it wasn't until the Industrial Revolution in the mid-1800s that coal became a primary source of energy. Coal-powered steamships and locomotives enabled the rise of modern commerce. It was used to generate electricity for factories and homes. It's no understatement to say that life as we know it today was built on the energy generated from coal. We're about to see the power generation process up close. We follow Tim inside the Craig station. It's dark and cavernous, humming with the sounds of machinery. Remember all that coal we saw outside in a pile? Tim shows us where it's headed next.
We bring that coal into the plant on conveyor belt and drop it through those cars into coal silos. From the coal silos, it drops down into the pulverizer. The pulverizer crushes it up. Big primary air fans blow that up into the furnace where we combust it. The coal coming up here comes up here at about 900 tons per hour. So what does that mean? 15 tons a minute.
Coal creates energy when it's burned, and in order to burn that much of it, you need a pretty big furnace. We're about to look directly inside it. We follow Tim down a narrow walkway until it ends at a metal wall and a porthole.
We'll look at the fireball a little bit. We'll look at a burner where the coal is actually being injected into the furnace, and we can see what happens in the combustion zone.
He opens it to reveal an orange inferno, a wall of flame generating so much heat and light that it requires a tinted welding mask to view safely.
I have a little advantage because I'm a little bit taller. But if you can look through this port at about a 45-degree angle, you can see the tubes go kind of around another hole, and coal is actually being blown into the furnace right here. And you can kind of see that. You can see the immediate combustion. You don't want to look without the mask.
And let me tell you, it's like looking straight into the belly of a star.
I have a dark screen in front of my face, so I can actually look into it. My fingers are on the side, and I can feel the super hot temperature. It's like the hottest day on a beach with the sun beating down on you and you're in the hot sand. You're like, I can't put my foot on this, it's so hot. And what's the temperature inside here?
The temperature right down here, I'd say, is about 1,600 degrees.
That combustion creates energy, but it also releases harmful particulates like sulfur dioxide and nitrogen oxides. All 3 units of the Craig station are equipped with what are known as scrubbers, which help reduce those pollutants before they escape into the air.
Low ash, low sulfur, high BTU, and low mercury. It's low on lots of bad stuff. This coal from this part of the world, subbituminous, it's very good. Clean coal, if you can see how that can be clean compared to back east.
That term, clean coal, came up often during our visit, and it's somewhat controversial. Sometimes, as Tim was using it, it refers to the specific chemical attributes of coal, which can vary throughout the country. Other times, the term refers to improved coal treatment technology, like the scrubbers. And occasionally, it's just partisan jargon. There's actually no universally agreed upon definition. And it's true that coal processes have improved over the years. We no longer see billowing black smoke coming out of the stacks, for example. But it's also true that coal can't reasonably be called clean compared to most other energy sources. It's an example of language playing a role in how we think about complex topics. We continue following Tim through the station. All of that fire in the furnace is really intended to do just one thing: heat tremendous amounts of water to create steam. And that means you also need a giant boiler. Most people might expect a boiler to be in the basement. Not here. Try the ceiling.
The boiler is that silver line box right there. It's about 50 feet long over there. It's almost square. So the boiler, actually, it's about 7,550 tons empty, and it's just hanging there.
It's suspended from the roof because it gets so hot that it needs room on all sides to expand and contract. Once the water heats, the high-pressure steam spins a series of massive turbines, which generate electricity.
And then what's happening here at the business end of the generator is 22,000 volts going out.
And voila! That energy is off to the grid. As we wrap up the tour, Tim beams with pride about the station and its process. This place has been his life for a long time, but there's a tinge of sadness about the current realities. A decade ago, coal accounted for almost 70% of the electricity generated in Colorado. By 2020, that share had been cut in half. Things are changing, and Tim knows that. He doesn't see any choice but to carry on.
The industry, it's a tough industry to be employed in without knowing that there's a lot of controversy about it. It looks different for us now, but we still have to keep the lights on. We're still making power. We're still doing the work. We're still doing this. So I always try to offer some kind of hope.
Across the state, coal closure announcements have accelerated in recent years. Colorado Springs Utilities will close its Martin Drake Station in 2023. Xcel Energy plans to shutter coal plants in Fort Morgan and Hayden by 2028, earlier than anticipated. And Tri-State itself retired the Nuclear Coal Facility in western Colorado ahead of schedule in 2019. Suzanne Tagan was curious about what that would mean for Colorado. She's an energy scientist and economist by training, including 14 years at the National Renewable Energy Laboratory. She thinks a lot about the cost of coal.
My projects had to do with the comparison between renewable energy coming into a community and a coal plant.
But in 2018, she felt like she needed a different perspective. She knew an academic approach wasn't sufficient to understand what the impending end of coal really meant.
I moved to the Center for the New Energy Economy at Colorado State University, where I am now, and became really interested in the growing divides, economic, cultural, and political, and kind of the intolerance in our country. We at the center are really careful to work in a bipartisan way, and could see that, political divides and also the rural-urban divides seemed to be growing. And so I was really interested in exploring that, especially in regards to the energy transition.
Suzanne wanted to get firsthand insight from coal country. So she traveled out to northwestern Colorado.
I thought I could talk to people in coal country around here and listen to them, hear about what they think about the energy transition. Do they think it's coming, or do they think Donald Trump is going to save the coal jobs? Or are they getting ready kind of for the next phase? But I didn't want to go in there assuming that I, had answers, because I had a lot of questions for them too, and they had the answers, right?
She started listening, and she wasn't sure what to expect.
At the beginning, there was sort of less of an acceptance that the coal plants in that area might close. But soon the announcements came all over the country of coal plants closing. And they became, more worried. And also they were frustrated that they weren't being included in some of the conversations about the changes. So the policymakers were making changes, the utilities were making changes, but they really had not involved the local communities that mined the coal and that generated, the coal power. So that was frustrating for them, and I can totally understand why.
It's hard feeling like you're not being heard. That frustration, though, also likely stems from the fact that coal isn't the market driver that it used to be. Supply and demand have changed the U.S. electricity landscape dramatically.
So for the economics of energy, there are a lot of different sides to it, but most people are interested in costs and the cost of energy or cost of electricity. And we've really seen that change in recent decades. And so going back, but not going back a century, just going back about 20 years or even just 10 years, we've seen the cost of natural gas really decline. And that is mostly because of hydraulic fracturing or fracking. And so the cost of gas went down really sharply. And at the same time, the cost of wind power and solar power has also declined really sharply. And so it started really with the fracking, and that made gas so much cheaper than coal that many coal plants in this country became uneconomical to run. And so even though we're still paying off those coal plants, it's still cheaper to work out a way to pay off those stranded assets or those coal plants and buy cheaper electricity from natural gas and from wind and solar. And so, today in some areas, even building a new wind farm is cheaper than running an old coal plant, which, you would not have seen that 10 years ago. But today, because the costs have come down, you are really seeing that.
It's not just the dollar value of coal that's changed. Our collective understanding about its other costs has changed too.
We didn't know back then as much about the pollution that coal would cause, and even with all of the environmental controls that we can put on the stacks, we still emit too much pollution, and we're still causing the greenhouse gas emissions that have really negative health effects. So even if you can't see it coming out of the stacks, it is coming out of the stacks. That was one of the questions that I got, in coal country. It is so beautiful in some of these places, and the skies are blue. And so it's hard to imagine that pollution is coming out of the stacks, but it is. And it gets reported by whoever owns that coal plant. And you can read those reports and see, oh yeah, it is actually emitting these dangerous greenhouse gases and CO2.
And now, just as coal once displaced wood-burning stoves, it's being replaced by its competition.
We have had a lot of money, both from industry and government, poured into research and development, and that has greatly increase the efficacy of both, solar and wind. Colorado right now, we're at about 24% wind power, and that is more than the rest of the country. So we're at about a third renewables in Colorado and about a third coal and a third natural gas. I think we'll phase out of coal in the next decade, and we still have natural gas. We'll, phase out of that eventually too, but not probably as soon as coal.
Suzanne made several trips back to Craig over the course of 2018 and 2019, and she helped produce a documentary series highlighting voices from the town. The COVID-19 pandemic has prevented her from going back in person since, but she's still invested in this town.
I wanted to be somebody who could help out. I know I'm from the outside, but I really do want to help. I think the energy transition is going to get us to a better place, but that's not better necessarily for each individual, right? It's better for the whole society and for our children, but it's not necessarily better for that particular worker. And so what can we do for that particular worker and that particular worker's family to help them be more resilient and be able to weather this transition better than they otherwise would be able to?
There's lots of people who care about this community, but a successful transition for Craig is going to require a lot of trust.
Somebody needs to work to build relationships on the ground and then have that person on the ground be able to talk to a decision maker, and have them have a real connection, either by Zoom or in person. But I feel like decision makers are a little bit cut off from rural communities right now.
It was January 10th, 2020, and State Senator Bob Rankin was absolutely beside himself.
There would be people crying in Craig, Colorado today.
Tri-State had just announced the coal closures in Craig. That news would have major ramifications for his district. At the Capitol building that day, he gave a fiery interview to a local TV station.
We're willing to sacrifice an entire county of human beings so that we can make an ideological, symbolic gesture. I don't agree with that.
That passion is emblematic of Senator Rankin, a Republican who represents much of Colorado's western slope. He's built his legislative reputation on getting straight to the point.
I did. I have a 30, 40-year career as an engineer and executive in engineering businesses. And that totally influences the way I think. I just like to solve problems. I've been called a lousy politician because I look at things in terms of, here's a problem that we can try to solve, rather than how does it affect me politically.
The Tri-State announcement likely means the end of hundreds of jobs in his district. It outraged him that day at the Capitol because he was thinking about the well-being of his constituents. Months later, he's more contemplative about the difficult position that Tri-State was in.
It was just a further acceleration of the closure of the mines, not totally unexpected, although it was a surprise to the locals. I think they did what they had to do. I don't blame Tri-State at all. They're trying to be helpful in the transition as best they can. They had several pressures. They had pressure from the state to accelerate the closure, but they also had pressure from their customers, the local rural electric associations, and their clients were pushing them toward renewable energy. So, they had to respond to their clients and to the state. I think they did what they had to do.
When it comes to energy, Senator Rankin walks the tightrope between aspiration and pragmatism.
Clearly, we're undergoing a transition to renewable energy. I represent probably, I think, most of the coal mines in the state and about 15,000 gas wells. So I feel I have an obligation to try to balance the pace of transition. At the same time, I support it. I do believe that climate change is real. I do believe There's a human contribution, also natural evolution and contribution. I would argue that those goals should be realistic in the sense of their impact on sort of the global transition to renewable energy and control of climate change, greenhouse gases.
There's another elephant in the room during all of these discussions about climate change. Colorado is just one state, and the U.S. is just one nation. Around the world, not everyone is moving away from coal. China and India, for example, are still building coal plants at a rapid rate. Global coal demand is actually projected to increase in 2021, reversing the recent trend.
Should Colorado be the beacon for the rest of the world or not? Should we take into account what the Chinese are doing every day, building? I mean, actually, coal use worldwide is increasing, while we have decided to put our coal mines out of business. I mean, that's our strategy, or that's the strategy of the state, not my strategy. So we are doing that, and we are transitioning faster than would actually be necessary if we kept pace with the rest of the world.
Suzanne disagrees. It's not about what others are or aren't doing.
The United States should definitely be leading the way on carbon emissions reduction and on building renewable energy. China and India are still building coal, but they're also building wind and solar. And so in China, they report to have more wind turbines than we do in the United States. So those markets are also growing fast. But of course, the U.S. should be leading the way. We use more energy than anyone else. I mean, per capita.
Back at the Craig station, Tim Osborne has heard the China argument from his coworkers, too.
I guess what I tell them is that is outside of our control. What's outside my control, I'm not necessarily going to worry about too much. I think the U.S. and Colorado in particular is trying to be the front runner in all of the clean and green production, and that's good. There has to be somebody with an ideal out there to achieve. Is that the most beneficial for the population right now? I can't say, but that's what I tell them. I just say that I don't have control of that, so I'm not going to worry about that necessarily. And then what we can do here is write our senators and have a voice in local or state politics and just try to have our voice heard somehow.
Energy is a global challenge, but that doesn't mean we can't work towards solutions.
As an engineer, I'm fascinated by the developments that are going on in energy. I believe that we can let the communities that we've talked about benefit from that transition, whether that's using coal for precious metals, whether it's using hydrogen in the existing plant. I think the community can directly benefit from that technology change. And so I'm actually excited about working on energy transition.
We're going to dive into new alternative energy technologies, like hydrogen, later in this series. But for now, I'll say the move toward renewables could eventually align with job creation in Craig as Tri-State looks for ways to repurpose the facility.
And I think that's what we need to be looking at. We should be able to repurpose some of this somehow. Some of the technology doesn't exist yet, and a retrofit on a unit like this could be pretty cost prohibitive. But we should still look at it. What are the numbers?
While new things are on the horizon for the Craig coal plant, we can't overlook the pain that comes with change.
But I think as plant manager, I'll speak for what I want for the employees first. Something sustainable for them. For me, I get to retire. I'm the right age, so does that make it better? Not at all. I'm looking for something sustainable for me and a way of life. Wide open spaces, not a whole bunch of people. I like that. But the sustainability to me is what I want for the employees here. If they want to stay here, I want them here. If they want to move on to some other opportunity, good for them. I don't know what Craig's going to look like, but I'm going to be here.
In our next episode of Coal at Sunset, we'll hear why addressing climate change is kind of like repairing your car. Plus, hear more voices from Craig and beyond as the transition looms. Be sure to subscribe to this series wherever you get your podcasts. Coal at Sunset was created by the Institute for Science and Policy, a project of the Denver Museum of Nature and Science, produced in partnership with House of Pod. I'm your host, Kristen Eulenbrock. This show was written by Trent Noss. Our producer is Juliette Luini. Our executive producers are Trent Noss and me, Kristen Eulenbrock. Our field recorders are Nicole Delaney and Juliette Luini. Our story editor is Catherine Jaffe. Sound design and mastering by Jason Patton. Graphic design by Nicole Dodlinger. Web design by Carlos Mosqueda. Special thanks to George Sparks and the town of Craig, Colorado. To hear bonus clips and find additional resources, visit coalatsunset.org.